I know you've heard the phrase, and I may be paraphrasing here, but a dream without a plan is just a wish, right? And essentially that denotes that if you have this pie in the sky dream, but you don't have any way of actually making it a reality, then you're just wishful thinking, right? Now, thankfully, this upcoming new moon in Sagittarius gives us the opportunity to not only dream, but to plan. And I think one of the best facets of this new moon is that if there's a plan or even a dream that you've had in the past, now is the opportune time to turn it into your reality. All right. So in this video, I will be discussing everything you need to know about the upcoming new moon in Sagittarius and how you can make the most of it. So stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. So if this is our first time meeting, welcome. My name is Mel. I'm a professional astrologer, and I'm the founder of Divine Feminine Works, where I help people unlock their divinity and discover their magic. And as always, if you are returning, welcome back. So today's video is all about the upcoming new moon in Sagittarius, going down on Sunday, December 1st at 1:21 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. All right, so you know the deal. New moons are all about setting new intentions and planting new seeds. The lunar cycle begins again. We get a clean slate, and we're at the beginning of the manifestation process. So, as I alluded to in the intro, this new moon has a lot to do with our dreams, our lofty goals, along with making plans in conjunction with those dreams. Like I said, a dream without a plan is just a wish. And so, this new moon allows us to kind of turn our dreams into reality if we're kind of willing to step out of our comfort zone and do a little planning. Now, the one thing I'll say about this new moon that I really like is that it gives us the opportunity to address plans and dreams that maybe we've put to the side, maybe we've forgotten, because not only is this new moon in the sign of Sagittarius, which is sort of the sign having to do with big picture things, but Mercury is also in Sagittarius and it's also retrograde. So we get to sort of take a couple of steps back in order to take two steps forward. Now, I know you hear Mercury retrograde and you're just like, oh my gosh, no, absolutely not. This is crazy. Nope. I want you to get out of the mindset that Mercury retrograde is a shit show. I want you to get into the mindset that Mercury retrograde allows you to readdress certain things and be intentional about other things. So it's definitely all good. All right. So let's get into the juicy details of this new moon. And of course, we start off with the basics. All right. So in terms of the basics, let's talk about new moon energy and Sagittarius energy. So first, new moon energy. So the new moon phase of the moon is when the sun and the moon are conjunct, meaning that they occupy the same space in the sky, and it represents new beginnings. That's why I always say new moons are about planting new seeds and setting new intentions. Now, at the new moon phase of the lunar cycle, the moon is completely dark, right? It's a very dark kind of phase. And this bodes well for the analogy of planting new seeds because soil is dark, right? Whenever it's dark, that is when we are really, like, spiritually speaking, that is creation happens in the dark, essentially. Let me say that. And so that's why it represents the beginning of the manifestation phase. Now, with the sun and the moon occupying the same space in the sky, it's really about this melding together or this synergy of both outward expression and inward expression. The sun represents outward expression, the moon represents inward expression. When you put these two things together, it's this energy of wholeness, of completion. So you're always planting seeds at the new moon from a place of wholeness. Understanding that there's certain external energy that's going to be needed, as well as certain internal energy. The balance of the two, the synergy of the two, is the environment in which you plant these seeds. Now, I hope that didn't go over your head. It's just basically, to put it in layman's terms, it's like you plant these seeds understanding that there's a certain level of work externally that you're going to have to do, whether it's action steps you're going to have to take, or there's a certain level of internalized work that's going to need to be done, right? If you're not new to the whole manifestation space, you'll know that it's about being. So it's not just about doing, it's being. So you're planting these seeds by doing and being, all right? Now let's talk about what seeds you're going to plant. If you've listened to any of my other videos, you'll know that I always say that you can manifest whatever you want whenever you want. However, around here, we adhere to the laws of nature, and nature, aka the astrology, will tell you what seeds that you plant at each new moon. Now, this new moon is happening in the sign of Sagittarius. So, you're going to want to look at where Sagittarius is in your natal chart. This will let you know what kind of seeds to be planting. And if you have no idea what your natal chart is, you have no idea how to read your natal chart, you'll definitely want to sign up for my free live natal chart workshop. I give it every 2 weeks, and it basically gives you an overview and an introduction to how to read your natal chart. Link will be in the description box below and tagged to this video. But back to Sagittarius. So, regardless of wherever Sagittarius is in your natal chart, the energy signature of Sagittarius generally has a lot to do with the bigger picture. It has a lot to do with our goals. It has a lot to do with expansion, adventure, and growth. Essentially, with this new moon in Sagittarius, you want to plant seeds that take you out of your comfort zone. For example, let's say that you are someone that travels, but your travel has been limited to domestic travel. You've traveled to the different states, maybe the different provinces if you live in a different country, but you've stayed and traveled domestically. This new moon in Sagittarius is going to urge you to perhaps plant seeds of travel internationally, to visit places you've never visited before, to take a long trip or journey someplace, which arguably may be outside of your comfort zone. Either way, this new moon in Sagittarius is really urging us to plant seeds that cast a wider net, that take us to places we've never been. What I love about Sagittarius energy is that it has this energy signature of not only sort of going out of your comfort zone, but being spontaneous, being risky, and most importantly, being adventurous. So, the one thing I'll say about the seeds that you're planting at this new moon, you want to have fun with this. You want to be a little spontaneous. You want to be risky. Now, understand that there's a big difference between risky and reckless. All right. We're definitely going to keep that in mind. However, be spontaneous, right? Have fun with this. Venture out of your comfort zone and plant seeds of adventure. Again, this is regardless of where Sagittarius in your chart. For some, this adventure may be a long distance trip, like if Sagittarius is your ninth house. Maybe Sagittarius is your seventh house. Maybe this is a great time to be adventurous in your relationships. Or maybe Sagittarius is your second house and it means being a little adventurous and spontaneous with your money or how you make money. Either way, I guess you understand what I'm trying to say. Be spontaneous, be adventurous, and be willing to broaden your horizons and open your mind. These are the type of seeds that we are planting at this new moon in Sagittarius. All right, so now that we've covered the basics, let's get into the numerology of this new moon and see what it says. All right, so in terms of the numerology of this new moon in Sagittarius is sponsored by the number 9 because the new moon is happening at the 9th degree of Sagittarius. Now, in terms of numerology, the number 9 denotes completion, but not finality. So think of it as completing a chapter in a book, but not completing the whole book itself. So this cycle, this chapter is coming to a close. And now it's time to move on to the next thing. Now, in terms of how the number 9 works with the energy signature of Sagittarius, Sagittarius is all about learning, but this learning comes from experience. It's like experience or wisdom gained through experience, I should say. And so it's almost like you're wrapping up this chapter, and whatever you've learned throughout this chapter, you're taking it into the next one, right? And this next chapter and the seeds of this next chapter that we are planting at this new moon, it's really about stepping out of your comfort zone, but taking the lessons that you've learned with you. Like if I had to sum up the energy of this new moon in Sagittarius, I think it would be that. So there's this completion, there's this wrapping up that we are doing at this new moon to move on to the next chapter. And one of the important things that you're going to want to reflect on as you're planting these seeds is, what have I learned? And thankfully, the fact that Mercury is in Sagittarius and it is currently retrograde, you're going to have ample opportunity to really think about what you've learned, reflect on what you've learned through the filter of your long-term goals, right? Your long-term goals and dreams. So there is this element of reflection that is inherent in the energy signature of the number 9, right? As well as Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius. So hopefully that makes sense. Now, also in terms of the numerology, right? There is this process of transformation that the number 9 ushers in, which makes sense, right? Because if we're moving on to the next chapter, we're sort of transforming and, changing where we are into where we want to be. So definitely keep that in mind. Now, the number 9, it says, has gone through its fair share of hardship and is wiser, stronger, and more aware as a result. And this is great because if we're leaving this current chapter, you don't want to plant seeds that are exactly like the chapter that you're trying to leave. Now you're wiser, you've gotten more experience. So these seeds that you're planting are going to be different than where you are. And that definitely speaks to coming out of our comfort zone, right? It's like Sagittarius energy really wants to push you out of that comfort zone. And the fact that this is happening at the ninth degree of Sagittarius is like, listen, all right, we want something different. We want to experience something different. We know that if we want to achieve this long-term goal or this dream, we have to plant different seeds that don't look like where we were or where we came from. And the energy signature of the number 9 helps us do that. Now, in terms of the astrology relating to the number 9, it is the number of Sagittarius because Sagittarius is the ninth sign of the zodiac. And so that energy of dreaming, of going, of launching into a different stratosphere is not only inherent in the fact that the new moon is in the sign of Sagittarius, but the fact that it's happening at the ninth degree of Sagittarius, which is the Sagittarius degree. Lots of Sagittarius energy in this new moon in Sagittarius. Okay. It's also associated with the sign of Aries. And Aries is about starting something new in a bold, dynamic, and arguably risky kind of way. And again, Sagittarius is like, all right, we're going out of our comfort zone. Aries is like, all right, we're going to do this. Like, we're going to do this big. We're going to really put a lot of force and a lot of energy into this new beginning that we're trying to start that is outside of our comfort zone. Now, there is going to be a caveat to that, and I will get to that when I talk about the astrology. But suffice it to say, we're starting something new outside of our comfort zone, and we're being adventurous and arguably a little risky about it. Now, the tarot card associated with the number 9 is the Hermit. This is interesting because the Hermit is very much about isolation. It's very much about solitude, right? But the connotation of the hermit in the tarot is like someone who willingly goes into the cave in order to achieve enlightenment. To understand that the seeds that we're planting, we're being a little reclusive or maybe even secretive about it because the number 9 denotes this isolation, but we're also doing it from a place of enlightenment. Essentially, with this new moon, this is very much a solitary endeavor with respect to the seeds that we're planting. There are some new moons where we can get the assistance or we can get the advice of other people. This is not that type of moon. This is the moon where it's like, okay, what have I learned in my life? And Mercury retrograde is going to have you reflecting on this and planting seeds alone, you know, planting seeds from a place of enlightenment, planting seeds in a very solitary kind of way, which I think is a pretty good thing. All right. Um, Now, the other thing that I like to look at when it comes to the numerology is what's known as the Sabian symbols. And the Sabian symbols give an archetypal story for each degree of the zodiac. So the Sabian symbol for the number 9 is a theatrical representation of a golden-haired goddess of opportunity. Now, this denotes rewards, awards, acclaim, a sense of presence, charisma, and beauty are all the promises of this degree. And this really speaks to what I was saying before. I think I was saying this before. If I didn't say it before, I'll say it now. We are moving on from this chapter into the next chapter of this book, right? The book isn't over, but this current chapter is. And so for some, this may be a situation where you're deciding to end this chapter, you're deciding to end this cycle. But for others, this cycle may be coming to a close naturally. And what comes with the closure of this cycle is awards, rewards, recognition. It's like you're wrapping up this cycle with a beautiful bow. And that feels great. And that's a great sort of state in which to plant new seeds. But even if you're deciding to terminate this chapter, and maybe there aren't a whole bunch of accolades and celebration, understand that the closure of this chapter brings with it something that is equally as valuable, and that is opportunity. And this is where the energy of this new moon really shines, because opportunity, I want you to think of it from a place of optimism. That is the energy signature of Sagittarius, is optimism. So even if what's ending doesn't necessarily feel good, even if you are taking, this current cycle that you're in and putting it on the chopping block and you're saying, listen, I'm not doing this anymore. I don't want to live this way anymore. Inherent in that decision to close this cycle is opportunity. And I want you to be optimistic about it. Now, I talked about this in either my weekly astro forecast or my monthly astro forecast, both of which I will link in the description box below. But the thing with Sagittarius energy is that it's optimistic. When we're thinking about the bigger picture, we're looking at it from this lens of optimism and hope. So when you are planting these seeds at this new moon, if you're not going to plant them optimistically, then don't plant them at all, because that would be contrary to the energy signature of Sagittarius. So whether you are getting a whole bunch of accolades because this cycle is ending, or whether you're deciding to end this cycle, abruptly, or because things aren't working out, whatever seeds you're planting at this new moon, plant them optimistically. That is going to be the key to really taking advantage of this energy of this Sagittarius new moon. I love that for us. It allows us to dream, and it allows us to feel good about not only the dreams that we have, but the seeds that we are planting in conjunction with those dreams. So it's really great, feel good-y kind of energy. All right, so that's the numerology. So now let's get into the astrology related to this new moon in Sagittarius. All right, so let's talk astrology. So there's 3 things that I want to highlight with respect to the astrology of this new moon. Number 1, Mercury is retrograde in Sagittarius at the time of this new moon. Number 2, the new moon, so both the sun and the moon conjunct, are going to be trine to Mars in Leo. And the new moon is also going to be square to Saturn. So first, let's talk about the new moon and Mercury retrograde. Now, the new moon is not going to be in aspect to Mercury. It just so happens that Mercury is in the sign of Sagittarius and is retrograde at the time of this new moon. And this speaks to what I was talking about in the intro, namely that if you've had dreams, if you've had goals, if you've had adventures that you've wanted to embark upon from the past that maybe you haven't entertained, you've put to the side, or you've forgotten, Mercury retrograde in Sagittarius is going to reignite those dreams. So this is cool. So maybe long ago, you wanted to travel to some far off exotic location. Of course, you put it to the side because money, adulting, life be lifing, you know the deal, right? Mercury retrograde is like, remember that trip you wanted to take? Remember that safari you wanted to go on? Let's see if we can make that happen now. And maybe this could be a really spontaneous decision where you're just like, whoa, I remember this. You're watching TV or you're on the internet and this advertisement for a safari in Kenya comes up and you're like, yo, I remember I really wanted to do that. Mercury retrograde happening at the same time as this new moon will be like, all right, let's go. Let's do it. Now, because Mercury is retrograde, actually doing it, like actually putting down a deposit or doing the research, it's going to be a little slow going. Because Mercury retrograde is slowing things down, right? So understand that one of the facets of this new moon is about action, right? Because it's the new moon, it's the beginning of the manifestation cycle. That's number 1. Number 2, this is happening in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is a fire sign, a mutable fire sign at that. So it's really about action and change. But because of the retrograde, this isn't going to be the time to necessarily take action. There will be a time to take action. However, it's like this new moon is getting the juices flowing mentally and even otherwise, right? Because again, this new moon is happening in the fire sign of Sagittarius. So suffice it to say, Mercury retrograde happening at the same time. Anything you've wanted to do from the past could be resurfacing. Any adventures, any dreams, any goals. You get what I'm trying to say. Now, this new moon is also going to be trine to Mars. Now, Mars is also in a fire sign at this point. It is in the sign of Leo. So that drive, that passion that fire signs are known for, we have that at this new moon. Think of it as like being in a car with a tank full of gas and you are just like, I'm ready to go on this road trip. Let's go the distance. Let's go someplace we've never been. Great. So, feeling amped, feeling motivated about starting this new chapter, about planting these new seeds. That is the essence of this new moon trine to Mars. And in fire signs, it's like, I'm ready. You've got a tank full of gas, GPS, you got all the snacks, you've got the playlist, you're ready to go. Here's the caveat. Mars is about to go retrograde as well. So when I said before with Mercury retrograde, it's like it gets the juices flowing, but not necessarily taking action steps. That's definitely going to be the case with Mars about to go retrograde. Now, this new moon is happening on December 1st. Mars is actually going to go retrograde on December 6th. And so Mars is getting ready to go retrograde, which is slowing down. So with that being the case, you may be feeling really amped and really motivated to plant these new seeds, but the environment is just not conducive to taking action. And that can definitely leave us feeling angry, frustrated, rage even, because we really want to go forward, but now's not the time. Now, retrograde is great for being intentional, and it's also giving us the opportunity to get all of our ducks in a row. So even though you're amped and you want to plant those seeds and do all the things and put the deposit and travel here and work on this dream, make sure all of your ducks are in a row. Remember what I said before, a dream without a plan is just a wish. These retrogrades, namely Mercury and Mars, they allow you to put a plan in place. This is so important because remember I said Sagittarius is spontaneous. So having a plan kind of goes out the window with Sagittarius energy. And then when you put Mars in the mix, and again, this new moon is going to be trying to Mars. Mars is impulsive. So you've got Sagittarius that's spontaneous and Mars that's impulsive, which equals not planning. Thankfully, the fact that Mars and Mercury are retrograde allows you to plan, right? Maybe you are really going to take that safari, that trip to that safari in Kenya. This retrograde season within which we find ourselves during this new moon in Sagittarius is like, all right, let's put a financial plan together so we can actually make this happen rather than it just being a pipe dream or rather than us being like, oh yeah, I want to do this and then not following through. Let's plan this. Let's decide to set aside a certain amount of money, or let's research some kind of app that allows us to automatically save for this. This is super important. And so whenever you get frustrated during this time, when it comes to the seeds that you want to plant, use this time to plan. Plant the seeds and plan. That is what this new moon is all about. All right. So then the third thing that I want to talk about in terms of the astrology is the new moon square to Saturn. Now, Saturn is currently in Pisces, and Saturn in Pisces is about having your dreams, turning your dreams into reality, like being practical about your dreams. And this bodes well with everything I've said before about Sagittarius, about dreaming big, casting a wide net, all of that stuff. Now, in addition to both Mercury and Mars being retrograde, the fact that the new moon is going to be square to Saturn means that Saturn is going to throw perhaps some obstacles or some monkey wrenches in your plans to further delay things, to further, make things a little harder to do, right? And I use the word do intentionally because, again, this new moon is happening in Sagittarius. It's happening at the 9th degree of Sagittarius, which is the Sagittarius degree. And it's trine to Mars. So there's going to be this energy of wanting to do. And Saturn is like, hold up. Not only is the retrograde slowing things down, Saturn is like, not only are you slowing down, but you're slowing down because there's a roadblock. You're going to have to take a detour. And yes, this can feel completely frustrating. But the way that Saturn operates is that Saturn gets us to slow down. Saturn gives us challenges in order to build our character and in order for us to learn certain things. Remember what I said before about Sagittarius? Sagittarius is about learning through experience, wisdom gained through experience. Saturn, as it throws a monkey wrench or delays in our plans to take action, is building up that wisdom through experience. So on the one hand, this new moon may feel very optimistic, very happy-go-lucky, very like silver lining, like very, yes, I can do this, I can plant this, I have these big dreams. But the astrology is like, hold up, I need you to plan. Hold up, there's things I need you to learn. Right? Imagine that you are embarking on a trip to a foreign country where they speak a different language and where English is not the predominantly spoken language. And you're like, yes, I'm going to go. Like perhaps you're planning a trip to Japan and you're like, yes, I'm going to go to Japan. I'm going to immerse in the culture. I'm going to go to all the internet cafes and immerse myself in anime and all of that stuff, right? But you don't speak a lick of Japanese. How do you think you're going to fare when you get there and you don't speak Japanese and you can't communicate? Saturn is like, listen, not only do you not have the money to take this trip right now, I'm gonna need you to sit down and learn at least some basic Japanese so that when you get there, you can thrive instead of fumbling around, not knowing what to say or what to even ask or even how to ask for what you need, right? Preparation is gonna be a thing with this new moon. Again, using that same analogy, you gotta learn Japanese before you go to Japan. You'll do much better if you at least know the basics. So when you start planting these seeds and you get hit with delays, you are trying to take action and you can't understand the reason for that. Not only do you need to reflect, but you need to plan and you need to prepare. And there's certain things that you need to learn. And that's the astrology as it relates to this new moon. And that's how the astrology is going to help facilitate this. Because going back to what I said before, a dream without a plan is just a wish. And the astrology is helping you turn that dream into a reality. So remember that when you are planting these new seeds. All right. So now that we've talked about the numerology and the astrology, let's talk about manifestation as it relates to this new moon in Sagittarius. All right. So, in terms of manifestation, like I mentioned before, the new moon is when we plant new seeds and set new intentions. So, that is pretty obvious that this is when we begin the manifestation process, when you figure out what you want to manifest. And then, to the extent that you can, you start taking action steps in accordance with those intentions and desires. Okay. Now, just as a reminder of also what I said before, if you're not going to plant these seeds with optimism and with the bigger picture in mind, then don't plant them. That's not how to best use the energy of this new moon. All right. So we're planting seeds with optimism. We're planting seeds of adventure, spontaneity, opening our minds and gaining wisdom through experience. Now, in terms of rituals that you want to do at this new moon, whatever works best for you, but understanding that we are working with the element of fire, particularly mutable fire with this new moon. So me personally, I am a candle magic girly. Because of my own astrological configuration, right? And also because I was born on a Sunday and Sunday is ruled by the sun. It's a day of fire, right? Fire is my thing. So whether you want to do candle magic, whether you want to burn bay leaves, right? Whether you want to write your intentions and then burn them, fire is going to be a really good way to create the environment to manifest these intentions that you are setting at this new moon. However, whatever works for you works for you. I'm not someone who's really into like sharing rituals and stuff because I think that that's a very personal thing. And finding what works for you is ultimately going to be the best for you as opposed to doing something that may work for somebody else. But either way, this is the part of the manifestation process where we plant those seeds. So whether you want to do it via subliminals, whether you want to do it via scripting, whatever works for you and your unique configuration is what you are going to want to do. But again, you're planting these seeds with optimism and with the bigger picture in mind. And if you're not going to do it that way, then you may want to sit this one out. All right. So now that we've talked about manifestation, although briefly, let's get into some messages for you from Spirit regarding this new moon in Sagittarius. All right, so let's get into what Spirit wants to impart upon you for this new moon in Sagittarius. Now, usually I write these down, but I didn't have the chance to, so I'm just looking at the cards right now. So, first and foremost, there is a certain level of victory that is accompanying this new moon in Sagittarius, meaning that, you know how before I talked about how this cycle may be ending with awards and accolades and things like that? I feel like for many of you, that is going to be the case. And you want to carry that energy into this new moon, especially when you're planting those seeds. So come from a place of victory, come from a place of accomplishment. Even if this chapter is not ending in exactly the way that you wanted it to, the fact that it's ending is victorious in and of itself. So carry that energy into this new cycle. Now, there is going to be this energy of the world. The world is not only your oyster, but there's so much to explore and experience in the world. So it's letting me know that this energy of adventure is really something that you want to tap into at this new moon, right? There's no place in the world that you cannot go, things you cannot see, things you cannot experience. So don't limit yourself with this new moon. Don't limit yourself or relegate yourself to manifesting the things that you know for sure you can manifest. Step outside of your comfort zone and know that the world is your playground. So you don't have to limit yourself, whether in mind or in location. Now, action is also a thing with this new moon. And I spoke about this earlier with respect to the new moon being in Sagittarius and trine to Mars. You have to be patient. This action, you're going to feel really revved up probably at this new moon. And that's a great feeling to have. But you're going to have to keep that momentum. You're going to have to sustain that momentum because although you've got a full tank of gas and although you're ready to go, now may not be the time. And so keep that enthusiasm for when the time does arrive. And how long it's going to take before you can take physical action steps, I can't say, right? It could be a week, it could be 2 weeks, it could be 2 months, it could be 6 months. But the point that Spirit is trying to impart on you is that keep that momentum. Don't let that dream die. I just talked about before how because Mercury is retrograde, we can really examine dreams that we had in the past that we put to the side. Especially if you've got one of those coming back up, don't shelve it again. You're going to have to keep the momentum. You're going to have to be intentional about keeping the momentum, even when taking action either seems impossible or seems really difficult. Okay. So that's going to be the not so feeling good about this new part about this new moon, but it's, I gotta give the messages as they are coming up, right? Also, the worst is over. For some, you're ending a cycle where it's like, damn, this cycle has been hard. It's been arduous. I didn't like it. The worst is over. Now, understand that because Mercury is retrograde, you might be ruminating on this cycle for a while. And Spirit is like, I want you to take the lessons from this cycle and keep it moving. This is not to wallow or ruminate in what wasn't working, what you didn't like. Use it as it is meant to be used, as a lesson. This is what I learned. This shit sucked, but I can move on to something better. Remember, I said this new cycle, there's an element of victory to it. Even if it's not ending the way that you want to, the fact that it's ending is victory in and of itself. So don't ruminate on the bad parts. Don't ruminate on what wasn't working. Take the lesson and keep it moving. And speaking of keeping it moving, there's a lot of forward momentum with this. Even though we've got retrograde isn't necessarily holding us back. Retrograde is allowing us to plan, to take advantage of this forward momentum. So use it for that. You know, the thing that I love about Sagittarius is if you look at the symbol, it is like the bow and arrow, right? And how do you launch a bow and arrow? You've got to pull it back so that it can extend forward. And that's exactly what the astrology, the numerology of the structure of this new moon is about, sort of being pulled back to propel forward. Now, you don't want to pull yourself back too far so that you cannot move forward. But there is this element of going through the past. And again, it's about either reigniting a desire or a dream from the past or taking lessons from the past to move forward. So definitely keep that in mind. There's also this element, like I said before, of planning, right? Mercury is in Sagittarius and Mercury is retrograde. So it allows us to come up with a mental plan, a plan of action. I like this because, like I said before, this is happening in Sagittarius. The new moon is in Sagittarius. And Mars is trying to this new moon. So you may want to take action, and this action can be risky. It can be adventurous and spontaneous. But the presence of Mercury in Sagittarius, particularly retrograde, is like plan. Put a plan in action. Look before you leap. Think before you take action steps. So this assures that this dream is not just a wish, but it becomes an accomplishment as time goes on. And the last message that I want to impart is that if you are not going to plant these seeds with optimism and thinking of the future, then don't plant them. Because what happens is whatever type of seed that you plant will bear fruit. And if you're planting seeds of what you experienced that you didn't like, that you didn't want, things from the past that don't serve you, things that don't move you, things that don't launch you into the next chapter. That's the fruit that you're going to bear. And so 6 months from now, or even beyond 6 months, when you're like, I'm still in the same place, I'm still stuck, I'm still seeing these advertisements for safaris and I still haven't put a deposit down, or I'm still not any closer to reaching this goal, it's because of the seeds that you plant now. If you plant seeds of apathy, if you plant seeds of woe is me, if you plant seeds of the same chapter that the universe is really getting you to close right now, you can't be mad when 6 months from now that chapter has continued and you haven't moved on to the next chapter. And if you can't move on to the next chapter, you can't move on to the next book. Long story short, everything about this new moon is about forward momentum. Now, this forward momentum is big picture. In the immediate future, we may not necessarily be able to take action steps, but we can plan for the future. And that's the best use of this energy for this new moon in Sagittarius. I want you to get amped. I want you to get excited. I want you to get pumped. I want you to get motivated, because everything that the universe is giving us at this new moon in Sagittarius is setting us up for the future. It's setting us up to move forward. And that's exactly what you should do with the energy. All right, my loves. So that concludes this video on the upcoming new moon in Sagittarius. I sincerely hope that you were able to get at least one important piece of information that you could use going into this new moon and beyond. For information on all of my products and services, they're either linked below or tagged to this video. Thank you so much for tuning in. I wish you nothing but the absolute best for this new moon in Sagittarius. This is the time to make our dreams come true. All right. So thanks so much for tuning in, and I will see you in my next video. Take care.